Good evening and welcome to the Reagan Library. My name is John Heubusch, and for at least a few more days, I am honored to be the Executive Director of the Ronald Reagan Presidential Foundation and Institute. This evening's event is probably the very last that I will host at the Reagan Library. But if I had retired on schedule last year as I had planned, I would have come out of retirement for tonight's opening. It has been 6 years in the making and is surely one of the most, if not the most meaningful moments for all of us in the Reagan Library family. It was July of 2017 when Melissa Giller, our marketing whiz, came across a New York Times article, yes, sometimes we read the Times, about the first traveling exhibition ever created on Auschwitz and the Holocaust, one that was preparing to travel on a European and North American tour. So Melissa did a little hopeful research and learned that the exhibition was created by a company in Spain called Muselia. So our Melissa types up an email in English, mind you, to a Spanish company and fires it off. We'd dearly love for the exhibit to come to the Reagan Library, she said, but I told her, well, it's a long shot. Well, 3 days later, the CEO of Muselia, Luis Ferreiro, the very person who conceived of the exhibition, answered us right back. Luis, where are you? There we are. Muchas gracias. Melissa's email, let's see. This email flew on the wings of hope. It led to 4 years of conversations and consideration. A visit to the exhibit in Madrid, a visit to the exhibit in Kansas City, a little bit of luck and a lot of hard work. And tonight we are officially opening Auschwitz, not long ago, not far away. The first ticketed visitors arrive tomorrow. It's been a labor of love to bring it here. With us tonight are many individuals without whom this would not be a reality. I thank you all. In particular, I want to recognize, first of all, our presenting underwriter, Ambassador Gordon Sonland. Gordon, my friend, we are truly grateful for you. I also want to thank Michael and Susan Dell, our partnering underwriters. Although they couldn't be with us this evening, their meaningful support was really crucial to the success of this exhibit. And I'd like to thank our wine sponsor for this evening, Herzog Wine Cellars. And for sure, thank you to Melissa Giller. Melissa, thank you. You will also see on the screens aside me a full list of our sponsors for this evening. Although I cannot recognize everyone by name, we are so grateful to each and every one of you, many of whom are here this evening. Speaking of support, I am proud to share with you tonight we have raised nearly $2 million in sponsorships and donations for this exhibit. However, our work is still not done. This is the most expensive, as you can imagine, and comprehensive exhibit we have ever brought to the Reagan Museum. And our goal is to offer free tickets and bus scholarships to LA area students who need them and this would be some of the most meaningful education programming and speaking that they will ever see at an exhibit. In order to do this, we still need help. So if you would like to help by sponsoring or providing support for this exhibit, we've provided information in the gift bags that each of you have. And also feel free to talk to any of the members of our development team who are here tonight, I'd like them to stand so you can know who to buttonhole. Michelle Keegan, our Chief Development Officer. Dusty Height Levine, Kay Rosen, and Laurel Johnson. Finally, I would like to take this opportunity to recognize a few special guests. Former Congressman Elton Gallegly and his lovely wife Janice. Where are you tonight? There we are. Acting Director of the Reagan Library, Alan Price. There we are. Good to see you, Alan. Incredible entertainer. I mean incredible entertainer, Jay Leno. Jay and his wife. We also have representatives from the council offices of Israel, Poland, and Lithuania. Thank you all for being here to launch this exhibit. Okay, so a step back in time, if you'd allow. In October of 1988, President Ronald Reagan spoke at the site of the future Holocaust Memorial Museum in Washington, D.C. And as they laid the very cornerstone of that historic museum, President Reagan said, of all Holocaust victims, quote, "We must make sure their deaths have posthumous meaning. We must make sure that from now until the end of days, all humankind stares this evil in the face, and all of humankind knows what this evil looks like and how it came to be. And when we truly know it for what it was, then and only then can we be sure that it will never come again." So by welcoming this exhibition tonight, the Reagan Library indeed is striving to do our part to help humankind stare this evil right in the face. I've often said that the mission of a presidential library, or at least the philosophy that we have at the Reagan Library, is that we should not be just about preserving the past, but also informing the future. Whatever chapter of history we might face, we should always strive to assess it honestly. None should attempt to rewrite it, ignore it, or erase it. And that is especially true of a chapter as dark as the Holocaust. President Reagan also called on us to achieve an informed patriotism where generation after generation understands what came before them so that they might shape a better future. And that is the ethos that this evening's MC brings to his work every single day. Whether he's reporting from the battlefield or covering a natural disaster, whether he's in studio in front of the magic wall at CNN or on location, whether he's interviewing a head of state or moderating a presidential debate, he has for decades been a voice of authority in helping the world know the facts and see the truth, which in turn fosters this sense of informed patriotism. We could not have asked for a better MC for this than our friend Wolf Blitzer. In a remarkable career that began in 1972, he has interviewed 7 American presidents, reported from war zones, including the Gulf War that made him a household name, from KGB headquarters, from inside of North Korea, from the Israeli-Egyptian Peace Conference, and he has covered just about every major event in American life since he joined CNN in 1990. Among the many accolades he and his team have won, it includes the Emmy, the Peabody, the DuPont, and the Edward R. Murrow Awards for Distinguished Reporting. But most importantly, he has earned the trust of millions around the world. Wolf is actually an old family name, and it is his family history that gives Auschwitz in this exhibition a deep and personal significance. Because of that, he made it a priority to be with us this evening, and for that, we are eternally grateful, Wolf. Wolf, I will let you tell your own story. For now, I will simply say thank you. And I ask everyone to join me in welcoming the host of CNN's Situation Room, the legendary journalist, Wolf Blitzer. Thank you, Wolf. Thank you so much.
All right. Happening now, breaking news. John Heubusch is taking his seat. Major development happening right now. I'm really excited and so happy to be here this evening. And I'll begin by saying what I would normally say around this time. I'm Wolf Blitzer, and you're in the Situation Room. And people always ask me, why do you call it the Situation Room? And I always give the correct answer, because whatever room I'm in, there's a situation. And there's a situation going on in this room tonight as well, and it's a very excellent situation. I'm so proud to be here. The Ronald Reagan Presidential Library has always been a very special place, especially for those of us who covered President Reagan. And as you can see, this is a really amazing library, an amazing institution, and I'm so grateful that they have decided that they want to do this exhibition on Auschwitz this evening and over the next several days. Let me thank John, let me thank the library, let me thank everyone who has been involved in making this night possible. You're doing the world, and I must say this, a great service by welcoming and elevating this extraordinary exhibition. This world-renowned exhibition, which we have come here to commemorate, is of unmatched power and immeasurable consequence. And it feels very personal to me. I always knew, for example, that my grandparents had died during the Holocaust, but it wasn't until about 8 years or so ago that I learned for certain while visiting Yad Vashem, the Israeli Holocaust Memorial Museum in Jerusalem, that I learned that my paternal grandparents, my dad's mom and dad, were both killed at Auschwitz. My dad left a personal history at Yad Vashem. He did that not only at Yad Vashem, the Israeli Holocaust Memorial Museum, but he did it at the U.S. Holocaust Memorial Museum in Washington, audio history, it's on tape. He did it at Yad Vashem. But I only learned in recent months, in doing research for a documentary I did on CNN on the history of the U.S. Holocaust Memorial Museum, that I only learned then that my dad had also left a videotaped history of his personal experiences during the Holocaust. My dad left that personal history, and I got the tape of that interview, and it was so powerful. And if you saw my documentary, it will re-air. If you saw my documentary on the U.S. Holocaust Memorial Museum, you'll see clips of my dad speaking out about what he remembered, what he saw, what he experienced. And it's a powerful story. And at the end of the story, at the end of his testimony of his personal experience, he was asked, what was your biggest surprise of what happened during the Holocaust? And the answer that my dad gave was so meaningful and so powerful to me. He said, and my mom and dad were both Polish Jews, he said, those of us, Polish Jews and others throughout Europe, we always looked up to the Germans as the elite in Europe. The Germans were the best in the culture, in the history, in art, in science, in literature. And once the Holocaust began, we were all stunned that the Germans were doing this because we always admired them for their history, for their art, for their science, for their music. How was this possible that a society like that would begin doing these atrocities? And that stuck out in my dad's mind, and it sticks out in my mind as well. My mom and dad were both sent to slave labor camps, concentration camps. Their parents, all four of my grandparents, were murdered during the course of the Holocaust. After they survived, and they were young, they were strong, and they managed to survive. My dad was born in 1920, so he was, only 19 or 20 years old when the war started. My mom was born in 1922, so she was young. They survived. After the war, after they were liberated, and my dad remembers he was liberated at Bergen-Belsen by the French who came in there, and he remembers hearing people speaking French. He didn't understand what was going on, but he ran out and he saw these French soldiers, and he immediately said, "Vive la France, vive la France." And they responded in French as if he could speak French. He couldn't. But it was always so powerful to him to know that these French troops had come and managed to liberate this camp. My mom was at a camp called Skarżycku in Poland, and she was liberated together with her younger sister and two brothers by Russian troops who came in. So it was really meaningful. But what did they do immediately after they were liberated and they survived the Holocaust? They did what all the survivors immediately did. They began to travel around to see who survived. I mean, there's no internet or anything, there's no lists. And they would go around and they would try to find out, did my mom and dad survive? Did my grandparents survive? Uncles, aunts, cousins, brothers, sisters. They met on a train as they were traveling. A young woman, my mom, and a young man, my dad. They were searching for surviving relatives. And what happened was they quickly fell in love, immediately fell in love. They had a lot in common, obviously. And as my mom and dad always said to me, in those days, immediately after the war, you fall in love, you get married. Because we didn't know what was going to happen a week from now or 2 weeks from now. You fall in love with somebody, you get married. And they were in a place called Augsburg, Germany, which was the US-controlled section of Bavaria in southern Germany. And they needed a rabbi to marry them. And they found a rabbi, there was one rabbi they found, who was a US Army chaplain serving there, and he married them. They got married, and lo and behold, my older sister was born, within a year after that, and I was born shortly thereafter as well. And my dad always thought it was a miracle, A, that they survived, but B, that they found a loving partner and that they had children so quickly. And it was really an emotional time. They survived the war, and they eventually wound up in a beautiful place that I like to call Buffalo, New York. So you may want to ask me the question, how did they wind up in Buffalo, New York, these Polish Jews who survived the war, who were then living in Augsburg, Germany? My dad was trying to make a living, and they wound up in Buffalo, New York. And I'll tell you how they wound up in Buffalo, New York, if you're interested. Are you interested? Am I giving you too much information? I'll tell you how they wound up in beautiful Buffalo. One day, my dad left Augsburg, and he went to Munich, which is not far away, and he sees a long line of people waiting in line, a long line. And as he always said, in those days, you see a long line, you go wait in line. There must be something good at the end of the line, otherwise, why are all these people waiting in line? So he immediately goes to the end of the line, and after a half an hour, he says to the woman in front of him, he says, "Fräulein, by the way, why are we waiting in line?" And she says, "You don't know?" And my dad said, "No, I don't know." She says, "Visas." My dad said, "Visas for what?" "America." My dad said, "Visas for America." What he didn't know then, which he later learned, was the US House of Representatives and the US Senate had just passed what was called the Displaced Persons Act of 1948, which granted 400,000 visas to displaced persons, including Holocaust survivors, of course. My dad gets to the front of the line, and he signs himself, my mom. My mom had two brothers who survived, a younger sister who survived. My dad only had one younger sister who survived. 4 brothers and sisters were killed. His parents obviously were killed, grandparents. He signs everybody up, and within a few weeks, they're all notified that they've been approved to get visas, immigration visas, to come to the United States. But the condition was that they would tell you where you were going. And so my dad gets this letter saying, you've been approved, you get a visa to come to the United States, and you're going to Buffalo. And so my dad said, Buffalo, where's that? And a friend said, oh, Buffalo, it's in New York. And my dad said, oh, New York. A lot of Jewish people in New York, it'll be good. He didn't know Buffalo was 400 miles from New York City. But eventually they get the immigration visas, and they take a boat that lands in Boston, and then the Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society, the Joint Distribution Committee, helps them take a train from Boston to Buffalo. They arrive in Buffalo, and the local Jewish community, but also the general community, was very receptive and helped them and develop a new life. My dad got a job first at Bethlehem Steel outside of Buffalo in Lackawanna, New York. He hated that. And then he and my uncle Sam Friedman, they opened up a deli in Buffalo. My dad didn't like that either. And eventually he became, at the advice of his two friends in New Jersey, who also had waited in line and got visas to go to Elizabeth, New Jersey, they became home builders, and they were doing really well. And they said to my dad, Dave, you should become a home builder. They need housing here. All these soldiers are coming back. Buy some land. My dad had a little money he had made, and start building homes. And my dad said, I don't know anything about building homes. And these two brothers said to him, Dave, don't worry. You're a smart guy. You'll learn how to do it. Just start buying some land and build some homes. And so my dad started building homes, and he eventually became one of the most successful home builders in Western New York. And he was so grateful to this country for giving him and his family a second chance to start a new life. And he was always so proud. As I always said growing up, our family, probably my mom and dad, were the most patriotic Americans I ever met because of the opportunity that this country gave them to start a new life, especially after what they had gone through during the Holocaust. We had an American flag flying outside of our house, not just on the 4th of July, but all year round. My dad was so proud of being an American and this opportunity that he got. As a result of my experience growing up, hearing their stories, this is very personal for me, and why it's been so important to me to learn about the Holocaust and to speak out about the Holocaust, which is so important, especially at a time like this when we sadly see increased anti-Semitism, not only in the US, but around the world, and we see increased Holocaust denial, which is going on. Hard to believe, but there are crazy people out there who say these Jews, they just made up the 6 million, it never happened. I owe it to the memory of my grandparents and all the others who died to use my little platform to help out, to speak out, to raise my voice, to remind the world that Auschwitz truly is not long ago, not far away. And thank you once again to this fabulous Ronald Reagan Library for using this evening to raise our voices. I often think of the words of Elie Wiesel, and I'll quote now. The opposite of love is not hate, it's indifference. The opposite of art is not ugliness, it's indifference. The opposite of faith is not heresy, it's indifference. And the opposite of life is not death, it's indifference. Elie Wiesel. No matter how close or how removed we may all feel to the events of the Holocaust, we certainly cannot afford to become indifferent. It's true that we have long since buried the regime that perpetrated these atrocities, but having reported on events here at home, including here in the United States, brutal events, horrible events, whether we heard the chanting, "Jews will not replace us," at Charlottesville, or the massacre at the Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh, or even January 6th and the insurrection, the power struggles that are going on overseas. Hatred clearly still lingers out there. We cannot ignore it. We must remember what has happened in the past and what needs to be done now to fight this. And as I said, anti-Semitism is still very much alive out there. And in this country, and indeed in every continent, there are even the people who say the entire concept of the Jewish people is a lie. It is a fact that many of the conditions that made the Holocaust possible, sadly, still exist. And knowing that fact, my judgment is that the work you are doing by teaching successive generations about what happened specifically in Auschwitz and this exhibition, and I took the complete tour just a little while ago, is really, really essential. If you haven't done the tour, you must go see it. It really is powerful. I remember very, very vividly, as I was growing up, my mom and dad would always speak about their experiences. They never hid the fact that they were Holocaust survivors, that their parents were murdered during the Holocaust. They were open in teaching my older sister and me what had happened. And one of the things that I remember my dad telling me, and it's very evident in the exhibition, if you haven't seen it, you'll see it there. Almost every town and village in Poland specifically, my parents were Polish Jews, almost every town and village in Poland had three names. They had the Polish name, they had a German name, but they also had a Yiddish name. And my dad would tell me, Auschwitz. We all know Auschwitz. That's the German name, but there was a little town there outside of the death camp, Auschwitz. The Polish name, Heubusch. The Yiddish name, which I grew up hearing from my dad talk about his history, his experiences, was Auschwitzin. That was the Yiddish name. And almost every town, my mother's town, Sucheniew, had three names because there were more than 3 million Jews in Poland before World War II. More than 3 million Jews. I think there's a few thousand left today in Poland. And I was just in Poland, in Warsaw, recently with President Biden. It was just it's a heartbreaking thing to think about, that what had happened during the war. So teaching all of these lessons to future generations is so essential. I'm really proud that what we're learning here in the United States is going on and is so important and so intense. I know it can feel odd to juxtapose a wonderful event like tonight's in this really distinguished institution with a subject that is so heavy, so profound, so complex, and so ugly. But I believe it's possible to celebrate the present while really honoring the past. It's possible and right to celebrate good works and important missions, even as we are mindful of the reality that makes that work necessary. History, indeed, like the news, is not to be kept in a neat little box. It's to be viewed and then set aside, out of sight and out of mind. We don't want to do that. We want to learn from history. Why? So we don't repeat those brutal mistakes and blunders and horrible conditions of the past. It is so important. One man who has made it his life's mission to work and to remember and to learn and to teach is my old friend from Washington, Dr. Michael Berenbaum, the curator of the Auschwitz exhibition. Sadly, he just was in Poland. He was supposed to be here tonight. Oh, he's here tonight. Let's give Michael Berenbaum a big round of applause. Michael, sit there for a second. They told me as I was walking up, his flight from Poland is delayed. He's not going to get here till much later. But he's here, which is really important. From 1988 to 1993, he served as the project director of the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum, overseeing its creation. And I have to tell you, that museum, if you've seen my documentary, it is so important because so many millions of people who come through Washington go and visit it, and they learn, and they see, and they get a sense of what happened to 6 million Jews. From 1997 to 1999, he was president and CEO of what is now known as the Shoah Foundation, which is devoted to filming and cataloging testimonies by Holocaust survivors. The Shoah Foundation, Steven Spielberg, very much directly responsible for creating the Shoah Foundation. And I will tell you this, one of the proudest moments I had after my documentary aired on CNN was I got a call from the head of Warner Brothers Discovery, which is CNN's parent company, David Zaslav. And he said, Wolf, you had a great documentary. I'm very proud of you. I just got a call from Steven Spielberg. He asked me if I would give him your cell phone number. He wants to thank you, and he wants to talk to you. And I said, sure, give Steven Spielberg my cell phone number. And within literally a few minutes, I get a call from Steven Spielberg. I'm a kid from Buffalo, get a call from Steven Spielberg. And he was so emotional. He was so moved by my documentary, especially by hearing the clips from my dad from his testimony. He wanted to thank me for that, and it was just a really moving moment for me that I'll always, of course, remember. I also want to bring in, as we continue this, Michael Berenbaum, stand by, because you're going to lead us in a special prayer. And maybe, it's a good idea to do that special prayer right now. Because as my dad used to say as a little boy growing up in Buffalo, when he would make me go to synagogue services, he would always say, and I wanted to go play baseball with my friends, he would always say, remember, son, prayer is very important. It might not help, but can hurt. So let's welcome Dr. Michael Berenbaum.
I come from Auschwitz, having taken attorney generals of individual states through Auschwitz for a seminar on anti-Semitism. Auschwitz, not long ago, not far away. The scandal of this exhibition is the scandal of the world in which we live, in which we're not able to put Auschwitz far away long ago. Because we live in a world in which the echoes of Auschwitz are heard often, too often, and the indifference that surrounds them is also heard. I've been introduced as the co-curator. I want to pay particular tribute for one moment to my colleague Robert Jan van Pelt, whose genius you will see throughout. Robert wrote a dissertation on the Holy Temple in Jerusalem, architectural historian. He was asked by a professor, and we try to trip up students at their dissertation. He was asked by a professor, what's the holiest site in the world today? And unbeknownst, he doesn't know why, he answered Auschwitz, which is the sacred anti-sacred, the holy anti-holy, the epitome of evil itself. And that becomes a very important element to understand. And what we have now, thanks to the people at Auschwitz and also to the people of Musela, we have the unique opportunity not only to go to Auschwitz, but to bring Auschwitz to the people in communities and areas that have not been there. Why the Reagan Library? And I think the most profound answer is the Holocaust was an act of government. Not only of one government, but of multi-governments that were either collaborationist or allied of the murder. It occurred over 23 different countries using all of the instrumentalities of government to perpetrate evil. Why? Because it was an evil unrestrained by basic concepts that are central to the United States of America. Restraint on the exercise of power, checks and balances, inalienable rights, and the most profound of all American concepts that we have not yet lived up to, which is that all human beings are created equal and endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. The United States at its best, and we are not at our best, the United States at its best should become counter-testimony to the power of government to create evil. It should be the testimony, the power of government to sanctify human dignity rather than to desecrate human dignity. And to treat all of humanity with a certain basic concept of equal and equal justice, something that we saw violated, and you'll see violated in all of the elements of the exhibition that you're about to see. It was my privilege to work on this exhibition, and now it's my privilege to bless the bread of which we eat with the traditional Jewish blessing, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Blessed art thou, O Lord our God, sovereign of the universe, who brings forth bread from the earth. Amen.
Let's give Dr. Michael Berenbaum a big round of applause. Now that he said the blessing over the bread, you can begin your first course. You have permission. To create an exhibition like this powerful one and to take it on the road requires the support of a host of visionary, generous, and really committed individuals. One of those individuals is Ambassador Gordon Sonland, the presiding underwriter here at the Reagan Library. He recognized immediately the importance of bringing the exhibition to California and to more Americans. And he saw the importance of this through two lenses. First, as the son of parents who were able to flee the Holocaust, he knows how close they actually came. The second, as a U.S. diplomat. As the former U.S. ambassador to the European Union, he understands that the U.S.-EU partnership is essential to a world in which freedom prevails over tyranny. And building that future requires knowing our history. Especially now when we see what's going on in Ukraine with this Russian invasion and the brutality. Just the other day, yesterday, once again, the Russians launched bombs at residential apartment buildings in Ukraine. They've done it against hospitals and schools. These are war crimes that are going on, and Ambassador Gordon Sonland fully understands what's going on and the importance of the U.S. and the European Union working together to deal with these crises. So, ladies and gentlemen, the 20th U.S. ambassador to the European Union, let's give him a big round of applause. Thank you for his service, Gordon Sonland.
Wolf, thank you for the kind words, and I'd also like to thank John Heubusch and the entire team here at the Reagan Library. I've been coming to the library for decades, and I've never been to an event here that has not been stellar, so we can add one more to the list. While he's going to be recognized later, I want to thank in particular my good friend and colleague, Ambassador Stavros Lambrinidis, who will be speaking to you shortly. Stavros was my counterpart. He was the EU ambassador to the US and is based in Washington, D.C. And I could not have asked for a better counterpart with whom to work. So Stavros, thank you so much for being here. You know, I'm very grateful to have been asked to underwrite the exhibition. It was not a tough choice, it was an honor. And I'm humbled to be here tonight to honor history and my late parents. Gunther and Frida Sonland were survivors. They were among the lucky ones. They didn't talk a lot about how they fled Germany to escape the Holocaust, but they spoke often about how thankful they were to live in America. As huge fans of President Reagan, I know they would have been deeply moved by the way we are remembering the past, especially at a time when anti-Semitism and Holocaust denial are on the rise. The French writer Voltaire said, "Anyone who can make you believe absurdities can make you commit atrocities." Today, there are prominent people who would like us to believe the dangerous absurdity, the lie, that the Holocaust did not happen or was exaggerated. I firmly believe that the freedom of expression is a hallmark of our nation. Denying facts for political purposes will take us down a very dark road. There is no patriotism in the current plague of very prominent people, and you know who I'm talking about, who decry evidence-based truth because it's politically expedient. False news travels fast, and people who listen, triggered by the words of someone they admire, could be driven to take actions that are deeply out of character. They could even participate in the unthinkable. I believe that this exhibition is nothing short of urgent. In my lifetime, I have never seen anti-Semitism at its current level. In the last 6 years, the number of anti-Semitic acts has tripled, and the ADL, Anti-Defamation League, rightly called it a state of emergency, and that was not an overstatement. While the words and actions of politicians and celebrities make headlines, most acts are carried out by regular people who develop exclusionary views. Genocide Watch defines the first stage of genocide as classification. And the way this works is they stereotype us versus them. There's something that feels commonplace about this, maybe even harmless to some, but genocides all over the world begin this way. Scholars emphasize that genocide is a process, not an event. And oftentimes, the first spark is the spread of lies about a group of people. In 1930, Hitler used the German Jews as scapegoats, blaming them for everything, for the economic and political failures of the Weimar Republic. Hitler's lies and propaganda led to mass genocide. A word that we must remember when talking about the Holocaust is the word normal. To organize the killing of 6 million Jews, it was not just leaders greasing the machinery of war, but the people believing their lies, normal, ordinary people. They were doctors and teachers, factory workers, and business owners. They were people whom, if you had told 10 years prior that they would be overseeing the systematic execution of millions of their fellow citizens, even aiding it, they would have never believed you. Genocides go through a long evolution of hate, and any group can become a target, even here in America. How then do we stay true to the promise of never again? I'll tell you, we educate, we learn from the past. The importance of this cannot be emphasized enough, for knowledge of the Holocaust is diminishing in every generation. In a recent poll, 2/3 of US millennials did not know what Auschwitz was or is. In 1988, President Reagan laid the cornerstone of what is now the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum and said, "I think all of us here are aware of those, even among our own countrymen, who have dedicated themselves to the disgusting task of minimizing or even denying the truth of the Holocaust. This act of genocide must not go unchallenged, and those who advance these views must be held up to the scorn and wrath of all good and thinking people in this nation and across the world." Ladies and gentlemen, we cannot have an exhibit like this one 100 years from now, about yet another dark moment in time when the worst of humanity prevailed. It is up to us to keep history from repeating itself. We must be the good and thinking people. Thank you for joining us this evening as we remember the victims and live the promise to never forget. Your presence here speaks volumes. Thank you.
Let's give Ambassador Sonland another round of applause. Like Ambassador Sonland, our next speaker knows better than most how essential the American-European partnership is to securing a future rooted in shared values of democracy and respect of human rights. He also knows better than most how easily those values are threatened. They must be defended every day on multiple fronts. And one of those fronts, as I said before, of course, today, is, of course, what's going on in Ukraine. A horrible, horrible war right in the heart of Europe. Ambassador Stavros Lambrinidis has been the ambassador of the European Union to the United States since March of 2019. From 2012 to 2019, he served as the EU Special Representative for Human Rights. In 2011, he was the Foreign Affairs Minister of Greece, a country all of us, of course, love. And he has served as a member of the European Parliament. We are honored to have him with us this evening, and we are certainly honored that he will share some history and reaffirm for all of us the importance of the transatlantic alliance. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome His Excellency, Ambassador Stavros Lambrinidis.
Dear friends, I am truly honored to be here today at the Reagan Presidential Library for the West Coast premiere of the exhibit Auschwitz, not long ago, not far away. As a European, this to me it's guttural, it is existential. The European Union was born out of the ashes of the Second World War. That's when the EU was first created. After a war where Europeans, in our own hands, murdered millions of other Europeans, and where Europeans committed the biggest human rights violation in recent history, the Holocaust. And when we got together to build the European Union, it was not because of money. It was because we were committed to create institutions that would never allow us either the desire or the capacity to perpetrate such atrocities against ourselves or anyone in the world ever again. And in the past 75 years, we have built the biggest, most peaceful, most prosperous area in the world, but peace in Europe cannot be taken for granted, and many thanks to Mr. Putin for reminding us about this with his brutal war in Ukraine. President Reagan famously told Gorbachev, Mr. President, tear down this wall. And there was probably one person back in the Soviet Union who heard these words and was committed never to allow that to happen, and that was a young Putin, who considered the end of the Soviet Union an affront to his image of oppression, expansionism, denial of other people's rights to free determination. And then Putin became president, and he used that hatred in order to be able to re-erect that wall by killing Ukrainians and hating them for who they are. He wants them extinguished. And you know what is hair-raising? Is that he has the gall to claim that he's doing this in order to denazify Ukraine, with its Jewish president, by the by. What an insult to the memory of the Holocaust and the victims of it. My best friend in law school here in the United States, Gennady, is a Ukrainian Jew. His family escaped the Soviet Union to escape the repression of those times. And he's, of course, devastated by what's happening in Ukraine. But one thing he keeps repeating to me is, Stavros, he says, keep in mind, we will never forget that the Nazis bombed Kiev. The first time they did it, it was 4 in the morning in 1941. And Putin bombed Kiev at 4:30 in the morning in 2022. Maybe that coincidence between Hitler and Putin escaped Mr. Putin. It has not escaped my friend. It has not escaped the Ukrainians. And it should not escape us either. Dear friends, Gordon said it brilliantly. Gordon, my dear friend, who I honor here today because of his generosity making this exhibit happen. Thank you, Gordon, and thank you for your friendship. I know sometimes this war in Ukraine appears to be thousands of miles away. For people sitting here, I visited with some diplomats of European Union member states here in Los Angeles this morning, and they told me, boy, foreign policy, that's not a big topic of discussion in Los Angeles. The other things that they talk about is not like Washington, D.C. And I say, really? I'll tell you what. It may appear to be thousands of miles away, but there is absolutely no safe distance when an autocrat sitting on nuclear weapons is convinced that he can bend the will of our leaders in the United States and Europe to his own by force, that he can make it acceptable again to be able to use force instead of law to extinguish people you hate from the face of the world. If that were to happen, if he were to win, no one is safe. And if no one cares about anything else, I'll tell you something, as a European who did build that European Union on the basis of human rights, when I see thousands of children from Ukraine being abducted, taken away, transferred to Russia to be brainwashed, if you don't care about politics, you care about this. Everyone cares about this. It is outrageous. It is the kind of war crime that the International Criminal Court just determined deserves to bring Mr. Putin to justice. And I hope that this happens. But as I say this, let me just say that the hatred of the Holocaust and the poison of anti-Semitism, as we look at the Putins of the world, is, and I agree with Gordon, still in our societies as well. And we owe it as Americans and Europeans to fight every day to extinguish that scourge. It is in our places of worship. We find it in our streets. We see it every day in our communities. Too often it is in the speeches of some politicians, in our workplaces. I can tell you, as the European Union ambassador, that we, Europeans, want to be better. We want Europe to be a place where there is no place for anti-Semitism, and we are committed to that. We have made research, education, and Holocaust remembrance a central pillar of our strategy on combating anti-Semitism and fostering Jewish life. We are creating and preserving physical networks and places where the Holocaust happened and building social networks like the young European ambassadors to promote remembrance. We are not resting until the scourge is gone, because we will never forget the 6 million Jewish men, women, and children and all others murdered in the Holocaust in European hands, and others saved by European hands, I have to say. And something that touched me particularly as a Greek here in this exhibit tonight was walking by 4 photographs taken by a Jewish Greek Alberto Herrera. He went in the resistance. He was dragged to Auschwitz, and he had a camera. He found one, and he took photos, evidence, real evidence of these atrocities for all those deniers out there. Not that many of them, frankly, but they are, who claim that this didn't really happen. He was caught, he was tortured, and he was killed in Auschwitz. And then he was paraded around for people to know what to avoid. But that kind of atrocity will not be forgotten in Europe. More than 1 million of those perished did so at the Auschwitz extermination camp, which is perhaps the single most powerful symbol of the genocide. So, dear friends, in closing, this exhibition, opening today at the Reagan Library, helps to keep the memory alive, and by confronting us with the most disastrous consequences of anti-Semitism from the past, it also helps us and our younger generations be better prepared to fight it in the future. Everyone quoted someone. I'll quote Nelson Mandela. And this is just a quote that has touched me the moment I read it. He said, "No one is born hating. People learn how to hate. You take a black baby and a white baby and you put them next to each other, they're curious. They touch each other, they don't hate each other. You're not born hating, you learn how to hate. And if you can learn how to hate, you can learn how to love. And I hope that this exhibit here at the Reagan Library, if it achieves anything, it's going to be to help us and those visiting it learn how to love a little more. Thank you.
Let's give the ambassador another big round of applause. Thank you, Ambassador. It was really, really so moving, so powerful what we heard from you. All right, here's another fact, and that's what we do. We report the facts. Here's another fact. It's been nearly 14 years since Luis Ferreiro first conceived of the Auschwitz exhibition. He now serves as its director in addition to being the CEO of Musalia, the Spanish firm that designs and manages powerful exhibitions from ideation to installation. His projects, which are housed in cultural venues worldwide, have been visited by millions and millions of people. In June of 2021, the Auschwitz-Birkenau State Museum presented Luis with the Light of Remembrance Award, its highest recognition for his outstanding contribution to the education about Auschwitz and the Holocaust. And it is such a clearly well-deserved recognition. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a very, very warm welcome to a visionary whose work has inspired the world, Luis Ferreiro. Ladies and gentlemen, Luis, come on up here.
Thank you all very much. I cannot really start my brief words just without showing my sincere and profound recognition and affection to all the people, institutions, and individuals that made possible the exhibition existence in first place and its arrival here to the Ronald Reagan Presidential Library. In first place, the Auschwitz-Birkenau State Museum, for their trust, for their work, for their collaboration in all the different departments, and for the vision, as Michael was saying, to take the story of Auschwitz in an exhibition to the world. And especially I want to mention Dr. Piotr M.A Gywinski for its vision and leadership of the museum and of this project. And of course also to all of our other loan givers and more than 20 different institutions worldwide that are helping us with the authenticity of their artifacts. Very especially also to the Ronald Reagan Presidential Library, Museum, The story of how this exhibition came to be here has been already explained, but it has been an absolute pleasure and honor to work with them, all their teams, to make the exhibition come true. And of course, to all the people and sponsors that donated in order to make the exhibition possible. Very especially also to World Heritage Exhibitions, our partners who are helping us bring in the exhibition to the United States. Without their help and providing all the resources, human, technical resources, it would have not been possible. And of course, to all the Musealia team, especially, I need to start by acknowledging the curatorial team represented here by Dr. Robert Jan van Pelt, Chief Curator and friend. And Dr. Michael Berenbaum, and of course, not here with us, but also Miriam Greenbaum, Paul Sammons, and Jamal Seniti, who made all the knowledge to be able to create the exhibition. As I was saying, Musealia is based in Spain, in the Atlantic coast, touching the border with France. For those who not know, it's quite a rainy, windy, even cold place, and our collections manager and myself, Ana Galan, who is here, we are finding very difficult our colleagues back in the office to believe us when we tell them that in the last week that we have been here, we have actually found rain, wind, and cold. It seems like, aside from an exhibition, we also brought the rain to California. So I hope that is appreciated. One of the things that in this week that I have been here, one of the things that I have been constantly asked is actually, what do we expect the visitors to take out of the exhibition? And it's, of course, it could be a very simple question to answer, but at the same time, it's a very complex one. And I have been reflecting a lot about this the past days. You are going to visit the exhibition in a few minutes, and you will see actually that we start with a quote from Primo Levi. You will see that we finish with a quote from Delbo. And for us, I think that the most important thing is somehow, in a way, how the exhibition started also. As many of you know, it was by reading a book from an Auschwitz survivor, Viktor Frankl, Man in Search of Meaning. And when I read this book, I immediately had this moral imperative to basically do something. And I think that this is at the very core of what we do in this exhibition. We show what happened, but we present the facts, we show the artifacts, we explain the story, but we also give agency to the visitor to understand that we all have, unfortunately, every day in our world, from dawn to sunset, the opportunity to do something. And it doesn't have to be necessarily a large exhibition or be involved in a museum or be an important journalist or politician. Every one of us, in its own level, can do something. There is no such a thing as small deeds, and we all have this opportunity to make small steps to create not a better future, but to shape a better present. Nobody can change the past, but we can certainly make a difference in our own present. I want to finish just by quoting a survivor, Primo Levi, introduced by me in its less known works by Robert Jan van Pelt, which actually captures this notion of knowledge, moral imperative, and of acting and doing something. He said, "There is no rationality in the Nazi hatred. It is hate that is not in us. It is outside of man. We cannot understand it, but we must understand where it springs, and we must be on guard. If understanding is impossible, knowing is imperative, because what happened could happen again." Thank you very much.
Luis, thank you very, very much. Thanks for all you are doing. We are all in your debt, and we are so grateful to you Once again, let's give him another big round of applause. As many as 2 million people are able to visit Auschwitz each year, 2 million people a year. But so many people, of course, cannot make that journey, which is why bringing that history, these artifacts, these stories to other continents really does matter. It is urgently needed. It is so timely and important right now. This exhibition that we're now having here at the Reagan Presidential Library, for the first time, brings original objects from the camp, the death camp, to new audiences outside of Poland. It is so, so important. It meets people, this exhibition, where they are. And this would not be possible without the partnership of the Auschwitz-Birkenau State Museum and its director, the highly regarded author and historian, Dr. Piotr M.A Gywinski, who is with us tonight. Let's give him a big round of applause right now. A few years ago, he wrote about the philosophy he brings to his role, and I'm quoting him now. "I am not that interested in why people come here, whether they're on a school trip or a tourist visit. I'm not that interested in their attitudes or their backgrounds. It is not what the person arriving here thinks that is crucial to me, but what that person takes away when they leave." Really important words. I imagine that the Reagan Library sees it exactly the same way. Maybe people will discover Auschwitz after coming here to learn about President Reagan, or maybe it will be the reverse. But either way, they will be able to take with them a piece of truth, a piece of history that they may not necessarily have previously possessed. And that is certainly a cause worth supporting. I visited the Auschwitz-Birkenau State Museum close to a decade ago after I learned that the Nazis had killed my paternal grandparents there. It was an experience that cannot be put into words. But as overpowering as it is, I am left amid all the emotions with a clear sense of gratitude. So on that note, and it's a very personal note, Dr. Gywinski, thank you so much for helping me to understand my family's history. More importantly, thank you for helping millions of people better understand the world's history. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Piotr M.A Gywinski, let's give him a huge reception.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, we are approaching the 80th anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz. It will be in January 2025. It's quite close. Probably it will be one of the really last round anniversary with still a group of survivors. And we are living still in a world that is our world, where the rhetoric of anti-Semitism and other ideologies of hatred, racism, xenophobia, different sort of populism and demagogy is once again intensifying. Therefore, we must constantly remind ourselves of the evil that is possible when societies allow such hatred. And this exhibition we are opening today has a special, I think, meaning, as it not only, as I hope, commemorate the past. Yes, I hope that all the people that will go through this exhibition will be a little bit different after. I don't want miracles. I just ask to be a little bit different. I hope that those people will have some moral anxiety in them that they will be able to reflect about the indifference of our world, about our own indifference, about my indifference also. Russia's barbaric invasion of sovereign Ukraine clearly shows how much the world needs historical remembrance to be a lasting and clear warning. And Auschwitz was a far too painful experience so the free world today could tolerate any symptoms of a policy of hatred, aggression, or dehumanization. Our world knows very well that Auschwitz and the Holocaust is a referring point for the future. And the remembrance must be the key to building a peaceful and just world. If not, I don't see what is the goal of the remembrance. It's not only about emotions, it's about decisions. Each of us could be somewhere else on this beautiful evening, but all of us decided to be here in this core experience of the remembrance of the Shoah. I would like to thank all of you for being here. This is the sense of our work. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Savinsky, and once again, another big round of applause. Thank you especially for your work to ensure that the world never forgets. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I now want you to enjoy your dinner. Our program, as I like to say in the Situation Room, will resume right after a quick break. Enjoy your dinner right now. We'll be right back. Ladies and gentlemen, shh. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you have been enjoying your dinner. Very, very delicious. But now it's time to resume our program. So all of you have to pay attention and listen very, very closely because you're going to be tested on this later. In addition to everything else, we have with us tonight, and this is really a blessing, some Holocaust survivors who are actually here. And if any of them would like to stand up, we'd like to thank them for being here and just being eyewitnesses to history. I've been very active over the years in supporting the U.S. Holocaust Memorial Museum in Washington, and every year we have a major dinner. And over all of these years, and it's so painful and so memorable for me personally, I've been going to these dinners every year. 20 years ago, we would have a dinner in Washington honoring the U.S. Holocaust Memorial Museum, and we would ask the Holocaust survivors to stand, and we would give them a very warm reception. And 20 years ago, several hundred would stand because they were all there. In recent years, sadly, when we asked the Holocaust survivors at the U.S. Holocaust Memorial Museum to stand, maybe 5 or 6 stand up because it's tough to see what's going on. And we need these eyewitnesses to tell their stories, especially at a time like this. So I'm grateful for the Holocaust survivors who are here tonight. Let's give them once again a big round of applause. We have breaking news, major breaking news. We have a special guest that I would like to invite up to the stage right now to share a few thoughts. Ladies and gentlemen, he needs no introduction. Let's welcome him right now, Jay Leno.
Thank you, Gordon. Gordon makes it his life's work to try and find the most inappropriate audience for a comedian, so thank you. This is another impossible one. People ask me, I'm not Jewish, I'm a Gentile, which is a word I'm not comfortable with. It's just so goyish, you know what I mean? I don't really like it. It's great to be at President Reagan was the first president I ever performed for. I was a nervous wreck. I was standing backstage at the White House Correspondents' Dinner, and a general came back, and he had all the pins and medals, and he goes, hey, what's your name? I said, my name is Jay Leno. You're the comedian? Let me tell you something. That is my president, you understand? That is my commander-in-chief. You don't joke about him. You don't denigrate him. You don't make fun of him. You understand? And he's doing this. You understand? I said, yeah, good. And he leaves. I go, oh, man, what am I going to do? And then about 10 minutes later, George Shultz walks in. He's had a drink in each hand. I don't want to say he's drunk out of his mind, but he was drunk out of his mind. And he goes, Leno, when you get out there, nail Ronnie's ass to the wall. And I said, well, that general, screw him, he works for me. I'm secretary, he works for me. And make fun of that black thing on Reagan's head. You think that's his hair? You think it's real hair? I said, well, I don't know. Okay, now what do I do? I'm stuck between a rock and a hard place. I remember my opening joke was a little rough, but I thought I'd do it anyway. I said, I want to congratulate First Lady Nancy Reagan on winning the Humanitarian of the Year award. I'm so glad she beat out that conniving little tramp, Mother Teresa. Okay. At a corner of my eye, I see Reagan fall off the chair. I go, okay, I'm in good shape. I got to have dinner with him. Jay, you like motorcycles, is that right? Jay, I had an Indian motorcycle. We talked about motorcycles and stuff. And then he said to me, Jay, were you a good student? I said, no, Mr. President, I'm dyslexic, so I was actually a terrible student. I was a good student. Me neither, Jay. I was not a good student. And every day I kick myself thinking how far I could have gone if I just applied myself. And I thought that was the greatest joke I ever heard. But I tell you, I just went through that exhibit. It is unbelievable. If you have children, grandchildren, please make them go to this. Because if you know anybody under 40, make them go to this, because it is truly an eye-opening experience. You know, there's something I've watched a dozen times, whenever I'm feeling sorry for myself for thinking, whatever, you know, I didn't get this, I didn't get that. There's a man I want you to Google. You probably know his name. His name is Sir Nicholas George Winton. I choke up every time I say this. He was born in 1909. He lived to be 106. He was just a regular man. He was an accountant, not even a great accountant, just a mid-level accountant. He had no connections. But he saved 600 Jewish children. And he did it by himself. He was just an ordinary man. After the war, he got married. His wife never knew what he did. His children never knew what he did. And when you Google his name, you'll see him, he comes on a TV show, and unbeknownst to him, he's sitting in an audience of, 800 people at a theater. He's in the front row. And a man walks out with a book and says, Mr. Winton, this is your life, blah, blah, blah. And they tell a story. And this gets me every time. At the end, they say, is there anyone in this audience who was saved by Mr. Winton? And the whole audience stands up. Everybody in that audience, doctors, lawyers, accountants, just everybody from every walk of life, children, grandchildren, to watch these people thank him. He didn't know these kids' names. He didn't really keep track. He just saved as many as he could. And his biggest regret in life that he couldn't save more. He was knighted at age 100. As I said, he lived to be 106. And you talk about a life well led. That typical British understatement. He didn't even tell his wife. His wife's going, what? What are you? Usually when that happens, the guy has done something awful, But here was a guy, he just thought it was no big deal. He just thought he's an ordinary person who should save ordinary people. And when you see this, you watch it tonight when you go home. After you see this exhibit, if you feel a little down and you feel a little blue, just watch it. Just see that whole audience, the love they give this man. And the woman holding grandchildren and the pictures of their parents who were killed. And he saved them. He got them all to England. He forged passports. He did it all by himself. It's just a fascinating story. So when you get home tonight, it's Sir Nicholas George Winton, W-N-T-O-N. He's my hero, and I think he'll be yours too. Thank you very much.
A legend, a great guy. Let's give him another big round of applause. Jay Leno. This evening, we will experience not one, but two movements of the 8-movement oratorio, Voices, by Michael Shapiro, who is here with us tonight. Voices, which premiered back in November, is more than music. It's a warning. It's a plea to hear the 6 million Jews who have been silenced. The first movement, by the way, which may be familiar, opens with the Hebrew words, Ani ma'amin, or Ani ma'amin be'emunah shlema, or in English, I believe with full faith, which comes from Maimonides' Jewish principles of faith. The melody is attributed to Azriel David Fasteg, who is said to have composed the tune in a cattle car while being taken to the death camp at Treblinka. In that cattle car, Fasteg announced that he would give half of his share of the world to come to whomever would bring the tune to his beloved rabbi, who had actually escaped Europe back in 1940. 2 men took him up on his offer, and they actually leapt. They jumped from the moving train. One of those men died from the fall, but the other survived and eventually brought the tune to the rabbi's son in Israel, who sent his father the musical score. Somehow, and we don't know how, the tune was later sung by countless Jews as they actually marched to the gas chambers in the Nazi death camps. In between Ani Ma'amin and the concluding movement, there are 6 movements in Italian, Ladino, Spanish, and French. The poetry of these 6 movements were written by Sephardic Jews, serving as a reminder that the cruelty of the Holocaust extended far beyond the Ashkenazi Jews of Eastern Europe. Michael Shapiro was drawn to their poetry from a book he encountered at the U.S. Holocaust Memorial Museum in Washington, D.C., where he actually served for 2 years as a music consultant. The poems he chose for voices inspired different kinds of musical treatments, responding to the different languages and locales. But the message is universal. It asks, where have we been and where do we go? Perhaps the answer is in the final movement. Listen to these words. And many of you who are Jewish know these words. Avinu Malkeinu, our Father, our King, hear our prayer. Avinu Malkeinu, hear our voice, spare us, and have compassion upon us. Have compassion on us and our children, upon our children and our infants. Make an end to sickness, war, and famine. Remember those slain for their love of your name. Avinu Malkeinu, remember those who went through fire and water for your sake. Do it for your sake, if not for ours. Be mindful of us and help us. Our Father, our King, be gracious and answer us, for we have little merit. Treat us generously and with kindness, and be our help. Ladies and gentlemen, the first and last movements of Michael Shapiro's Voices, performed by the Los Angeles Master Chorale, conducted by Kiki and David Gindler, Artistic Director Grant Gershon. Ladies and gentlemen, let's listen and reflect.
על שם קודשך. אבינו מלכנו עשה למענך, אם לא למעננו, אבינו מלכנו עשה למענך.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's give Grant Gershon, Michael Shapiro, and the LA Master Chorale a huge, huge round of applause. It brought back memories for me because I remember my mom and dad, whenever on the high holidays, they would hear the Hebrew prayer Ani Ma'amin, and the cantor would sing it. They both started to cry. And I would ask them, why are you crying? Because that was the song that all of their friends and family members who were taken from the camps to the gas chambers would start singing as they were being marched off to their death. Ani Ma'amin, I believe, in Hebrew. It was such a powerful rendition that we all just heard, and so meaningful, especially for those of us who have family members who survived the Holocaust and remember their friends and family singing Ani Ma'amin as they were being led to their death. Almost 40 years ago, in April 1983, President Reagan addressed the American gathering of Jewish Holocaust survivors. Before we move upstairs to continue our evening, I want to share some of his powerful and very inspiring words. They provide a benediction of sorts, a charge to all of us who are here tonight. These are the words from our 40th President of the United States, and I'm quoting now. Tonight, let us pledge that we will never shut our eyes, never refuse to acknowledge the truth, no matter how unpleasant. If nothing else, the painful memory we share should strengthen our resolve to do this. And then he went on to say, and I'm quoting still, our founding fathers believed in certain self-evident truths, but for truth to prevail, we must have the courage to proclaim it. That's a direct quote from President Reagan. To the Reagan Library trustees, to the staff, to the benefactors, the underwriters, and the supporters, I believe you have clearly lived up to President Reagan's charge on this evening. You have had the courage to proclaim truth. Let us all pledge to do the same. And if we do, truth will indeed prevail. So, so important. And let us all end this part of our program tonight before we head upstairs, remembering the 6 million Jews who were massacred and murdered during the Holocaust. As we say in the Hebrew, Zichronam livracha, may their memories be a blessing. And indeed, let us hope their memories are indeed a blessing. Thanks to all of you for joining us on this very meaningful evening. And we will continue to remember them, and we will continue to remember the lessons of the Holocaust. It is so timely, so important, and today more important perhaps than ever before as we enter this new era. Thank you once again. God bless all of you. Good night.